Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello, hi, welcome to NPTEL's course on communication skills. We are now on module number 4 and lecture number 3. This is the third lecture series on listening skills, and this will be the concluding lecture on listening skills on module number 4. Now, what did we do in the past 2 lectures? Just to recapitulate and sum up before I start this lecture. Overall, I said at the beginning that in this module you will learn about, as you did in the first lecture, listening as an integral part of communication skills. I was just trying to clear some misapprehensions, misconceptions with regard to listening, which is underestimated as a skill in comparison to speaking. So, I overemphasized rather to show that listening is equally important or much more important than even speaking. And if you have to identify the top 2 skills which are required professionally, I said that it is listening and added with speaking. So, these are the top 2 skills. Now, having understood these 2 skills as very important skills in terms of getting through group discussion, interviews and job promotions, then I went on emphasizing as how it is integral still in terms of communication, even in terms of maintaining human relationships. So, if you really want to be a happy individual, one important ingredient that you should have in your personality trait is that you should be a very good, not just good, but also an effective listener. And in order to make one an effective listener, in the first lecture we also talked more about the significance of effective listening. I tried to give you some illustrative examples to demonstrate that. And at the end of the first lecture, I also pointed out there are types of listeners, which we did it in the second lecture. And under types of listeners, I was focusing on various types such as the evaluative listener, the non-listener, and then I finally tried to tell you that one should be an active listener as against the polar opposite, passive listener. I said one should be an active listener. I also clarified some misconceptions related to active listening, that people generally think listening itself is a passive kind of activity and one need not expend energy, one has to listen just like that. But I also try to tell you that psychologists, physiologists try to analyze and understand the kind of changes that happen during active listening process, and then they try to tell us that just like the way a person is doing speed walking, just like the way a person would do jogging, we also understand that somebody who is involved in active listening is spending energy. So, I also said that when you think that if you are actively involved, you are likely to become tired, I said that that's not a negative thing compared to the benefit, the gain that you are going to have once you become an active listener. Now, in that context, after classifying the types of listeners, I talked about some barriers to listening, and then I suggested how you should overcome the barriers so that you reap the rewards as an effective listener. So, after talking to you about some very important barriers, I talked about 8 barriers. You should review that by going to the previous lecture, but some of the most important ones, like showing negativity towards the speaker, or showing antipathy, hatred towards the speaker, or being prejudiced about the speaker or the speech, or getting absorbed in distractions. So, these barriers I also suggested how one should overcome, and at the end of it I suggested that I will continue more with listening techniques as such in terms of becoming an active listener. So, in this lecture, so we will be focusing particularly on active listening skills, followed by benefits of effective listening. So, almost the major part is on active listening techniques, and then I'll continue talking about the benefits of effective listening before I conclude this module. Let's start with some very simple active listening techniques, which are also common sense listening techniques, which are also mandatory techniques that are required in any situation, like even classroom situation. First of all, take notes. It's a very simple and common sense advice, whether you are in the class or in the auditorium attending to a conference, or just there is a speaker who has come to give a demonstration, or even if you are involved in just talking to somebody, giving an interview, you are in a group discussion kind of situation, wherever it is possible, wherever you are officially allowed to keep a notebook, take notes. In case you are not allowed to carry long books, keep a small pocket diary, small pocket note which you carry all the time, and then whenever you think that you should note down some important key points, note them. Now, why is it's important to take notes? First of all, as part of active listening techniques, it helps one concentrate. Personally, I always think that I can remember a lecture very well, but then I realized later that I remember some points, not all the points, and to my surprise, I find it very difficult to recollect one very important point. So, the next time what I do, I go there with a notebook and then take those keywords, phrases that will help me to connect to the whole lecture when I want to recall that lecture, however good my memory is. So, in that sense, on the one hand, it's helping me to concentrate, because I know that I should note down the important points. So, I listen to the speaker, at the same time I am also scanning for important information and then taking notes, noting down the very important key points on the one hand. But on the other hand, I also know that later, whenever I want to review this lecture, whenever I want to remember what the speaker said, I always have notes at my hand. I can also revert back to the speaker once the speaker finishes it. Instead of interrupting the speaker then and there, I can note down the questions that comes to my mind whenever he is talking. I can note it down and I can ask it at the end of the speech instead of interfering when the speech is going on. So, notes helps in concentration, notes helps in reviewing, recording, notes helps also in maintaining certain polite decorum when the speech is going on. Overall, it keeps one alert. So, there are people who think that they can maintain the whole thing without taking notes, but then slowly they start dozing off because they feel that the lecture is fine, but then they have nothing else to do. But when one has to make notes, the person also realizes that the person has to be alert all the time, because any time the speaker may drop a very important idea. Now, in a situation like telephone conversation, note taking is a very important prerequisite. Now, it can be even on a small notepad, small piece of paper, but if you want to become a professional person in terms of communicating using a telephone, you need to go there with some notes. For instance, if you are going to fix an appointment, you need to just tell exactly the date, time, venue and the day. Now, there is no point in saying that this will be on the weekend which day. So, just then you say, I will look at the calendar and tell you. So, suppose you say 22nd. So, 22nd is that a Thursday or a Friday? Wait for a moment, let me go and check it up. So, you go and check it up and then the connection is disconnected, or you are just making a very important long distance international call and then you are losing so much of your money or the company's money. More than that, from the other side, the person may all the time tell you, okay, note down this number. Now that's the time you cannot run for a pen, run for a piece of paper. So you have your notebook ready, it's at hand, then you note down that number. You not only note down, you also repeat, show the other person that you have noted down carefully. So as a good listener, you are exhibiting certain skills associated with note making, that you are alert, you concentrate on the message, you are careful, you are considerate to the speaker. So note making, although it's a very common sense kind of advice that's required as a simple basic skill, I am keeping that as the foremost skill as far as active listening techniques are concerned. Next, understand that when you are a listener, you are also performing the role of a manager. Unlike you in a situation where you are just a hearer, let us say you are going to a concert and then you are hearing the music. Now you are not in a professional music college where you are also listening to the music because you also want to learn something. Now in a concert, you just went there for entertainment, you just went to have some fun. So you heard the music and then the sound waves are getting into your system and then it's generating lot of vibes and then you start dancing. Now the situation where you are just hearing, that's for entertainment. But when you are actually listening, as in a professional conference, when you are listening to the speaker, understand that you are at the level of management. You are functioning like a manager and doing certain things which a manager would do, such as the whole listening skill you are involving. For instance, planning. You plan beforehand, even to take your pen, your notebook, and if it is a kind of interview, you even plan to go there with a tape recorder. Nowadays, if video is allowed, you also go with the camera. So in all these things you are planning, and then you also plan to go and be seated in the front row, because maybe you feel that my audibility may be very poor if I go to the back row and I want to focus more on the speaker, and if I go to the back rows, I will be sometimes getting distracted with the audience who are there in the middle, or the audience who are getting restless and impatient. I may be distracted, so I don't want to sit there. So you are planning what you will take, where you will position yourself, how long will you listen. So you plan that, okay, this speech is set for 1 hour, I am there for full 1 hour, but if the speaker exceeds, now I have another appointment, so I have to leave at 55 minutes. So I will ask somebody to record the remaining speech. This is also part of planning. This also involves some decision making, to do or not to do. So to continue or to discontinue, whom to decide to do what. So as a manager, even in listening, you are involving your managerial skills. This is different from hearing, which involves only skills related to entertainment, which are just implicit, taken for granted. Go to a concert, you just dance and come back. But when you go to a conference, you use lot of managerial skills. So understand that part and then be ready, be prepared. As a kind of attentive audience and would be active listener or active listener in the making, be always supportive to the speaker. Never go there with the tendency to oppose the speaker. And even if you are going to oppose in terms of viewpoints, in terms of the argument that is generated by the speaker, make the speaker feel that you are against the ideas, not the person. You have nothing to do with the personality of the speaker. Be kind and appreciative to the speaker, that you are thankful to the fact that he brought that point, but you are not happy about the fact, the way he was logically trying to support it, and then you have different viewpoint. So the difference in opinion doesn't matter, that you are underestimating that person, you are not showing any antipathy towards that person. So this point you should make it clear on the one hand. On the other hand, when I say that be supportive to the speaker, generally go with that kind of frame of mind, that you will support and make your complete body, mind and soul, put all your heart in the listening process. Now, what do I mean by this? Let the whole body language, it's not just making your mind active, let the whole body language correlate with your thinking that you are going to listen to this speech very actively. How can you do this? You can nod your head, you can maintain eye contact, you can give appreciative smile, you can give just appreciative glance, you can clap if the decorum permits, you can clap, you can applaud to show that that was a great point, and you can just show attentively that you are making notes. So, this will all make the speaker feel important, to know that he is being attended to. And psychologists say that whenever you are giving attention to the speaker, whenever the speaker feels that he is being listened to, there are people to listen to him, all ears, all eyes, the speaker delivers his best. The same thing happens to most of the teachers. Once the teachers realize that this batch of students are doing extremely well and they are going ahead of the teachers, they have done lot of homework, they are coming to the class thoroughly prepared, and then they are putting questions to the teacher that the teacher has to think ahead, plan ahead. They are challenging the teacher plans better, the teacher does much more homework, and the teacher feels very happy to be in such a classroom where all the students are very attentive and all are active listeners. They interfere, but gently if required, but whenever they interfere, they are actually guiding the teacher to move ahead. So, the point I am making is, when you show that you are supporting the speaker is actually delivering his or her best. So, it is again a win-win situation. You are helping the speaker to bring her best and she brings her best. By bringing her best, you are the one who will benefit as the audience, especially if it is in a classroom situation. If the teacher is delivering the best lecture, it is the students who are going to be benefited. Apart from just getting the information, the students are also being motivated to run to the libraries, because the teacher motivated them so much about that subject, because the teacher was able to bring out that inner radiance and spread it to the students. So, encourage the speaker by affirmative nods, show the speaker that you are actually following the speaker, and use facial expressions, smile, appreciative glance, etc. And then this I already implied and I am making it as a point, do not interrupt the speaker. Now, some people, because of their impatience, their over enthusiasm, their curiosity, or even they are not able to understand something, they interrupt the speaker. Now, basically you should not interrupt the speaker for certain practical reasons and certain polite reasons. Now, the practical reasons, when you interfere the speaker's flow is cut. I know as a teacher, when I am talking on a topic, when somebody is interfering, however interesting that interference may be, however good it may bring out another point, I make the other point very clearly, but when I come back, I also understand that I missed the main point, and then I was in such a flow, I was about to say something that was there in my mind, before I delivered, it was interfered. So, it was truncated. So, what happened, I deprived of my own students, my own audience, of the most important point of my lecture. I got distracted because somebody interfered very effectively. Everybody enjoyed, including me, that distractive part, but then it destroyed, in a sense, the main thrust of the lecture. So, do not harm the overall generative body of information by your interference. Do not harm the speaker's flow by your interference. This is at the mental, intellectual, academic level, but it also at other level shows that you are a very poor listener. you may be interfering the listener for something that he must have just said. How often it happens in the classroom, a student asks something that the teacher just clarified a minute before, and the teacher has to tell, I just clarified this. Okay, the teacher is again polite and says, why don't somebody recollect and tell him this? Or the teacher herself recollects it once again and tells for the person. But the overall flow is cut, the pace of the lecture is reduced. This, apart from showing in some cases that the audience is smart, it also shows that the audience standpoint is weak. The audience, the person who is interfering particularly, is possessing poor listening skills. Now, it also showcases one's very rude and uncultured self. It's impolite if somebody rudely interferes with the speaker's flow of talk. It's also showing a very uncultured behavior which is not expected. Now, you interfere because you are in a cozy situation and you are at a kind of elevated position where you can interfere the person, but that does not mean that you should do that frequently, unwarrantedly, even when it is not asked for, and even you know that it is not necessary. It may be just a very bad attention seeking behavior, like a child, you just interfere, and then even without saying excuse me, may I interfere, even without using those polite marks, somebody directly asks, cuts across and then puts a question which is rude, impolite. For the reasons that I have explained, it is cutting that intellectual flow, but at all the same time it is also making the person lose his control over other audience. But you may gain some attention seeking behavior, but it also shows that you are not that cultured. So, keep that in mind. Do not interrupt, interfere the speaker's flow of thoughts. And to continue with more on active listening techniques, do not change the topic. Now, if you are not interested in the topic, it may happen that sooner or later you will develop interest when the topic is moving from one level to another. Just because you know the fundamentals, basic level, do not divert, do not change the topic, because the speaker has planned something. By changing the topic, you are making the speaker insecure, and you are making the speaker say something that is irrelevant, that might be of some interest to you, but not to the whole audience for whom he has actually come prepared for. So, do not change the topic, and do not seek self attention in any manner apart from interfering. So, in any manner, do not try to seek self attention. You can do this even by coughing, or even by just getting up, going out, coming back frequently. So, you can do this in so many verbal and non-verbal manner, but do not seek self attention. It is again not a good behavior. Do not dismiss the topic. So, let us say it is in an open situation, somebody is asking, shall I discuss on this topic? Immediately you say, that is nonsense. How many times you will talk on the same topic, or how many times will I listen to this topic? Stop that nonsense. No, do not dismiss the topic even before the topic is being discussed with you. Do not do that. And avoid multitasking. So, what some of us do, some of us, like even in terms of mobile, there are people who use 3 mobiles, 4 mobiles, 5 SIM cards. So, nowadays it is fashionable to have a mobile that can have 6 SIM cards. Okay, it has, and then they advertise it as 6 SIM card memory. You can use 2 slots simultaneously. What happens? There is a point, both mobile phones are seeking the attention of the speaker, and then in case he has 3-4 mobiles at hand, there is a point all the mobiles are ringing, and then there is this landline, and then there is somebody who has come from courier seeking his signature, and then the person is also reading a book, and the person is also listening to this one, and the person also needs to give some important instructions to his subordinate. Now, multitasking, although one thinks that I can be very efficient in multitasking and I can do wonderful things, in practice it is not possible. always the person who is in multitasking is saving time, but then there is some kind of compromise in terms of efficiency, in terms of accuracy, especially in terms of listening skills. Multitasking is not an advised one. One should switch off one's mobile, cut off the landline connection, or put that in silent mode, put it in mute, close the door if you are listening to a personal conversation, or if it is a small group discussion, just shut the door, put a notice outside before you do that, that important conversation do not disturb till 12 o'clock, till 12:30. So, shut all kind of distractions as much as possible. Now, when I say this, once the outside door everything has been taken care, mobile, other gadget, even if you have a laptop in which the email announcement comes or the instant messaging buzzer comes, sound comes, put that in silent mode or just remove that kind of announcing sounds. Now, once you do all these things externally, you should also take care of the internal multitasking. When I say multitasking, I am talking about the external as well as the internal. The external one is using all these kind of gadgets and then indulging in so many conversations at the same time. But the internal one is listening to this person, but at the same time mentally preparing, what shall I do for tomorrow's talk? So, what about that meeting? Okay, so what did my wife ask me to buy? I forgot that. Oh, where is that list? And then looking for that list. That internal multitasking. So, that also should be avoided. When I say that multitasking, think of both external as well as internal and avoid. Then, as the speech proceeds, in order to show that you are a very active listener, ask questions. I put two techniques. First one, I am saying that ask questions. Second, I say ask open questions. Now, why do I differentiate? First of all, I am saying that ask questions. Many people do not ask questions at all. They sit idly. Even when they have to ask questions, even when the speaker says that if you have any questions, doubts, clarifications, please ask me. Even at that point, people do not ask questions. Now, same thing happens in classroom situations. The teacher at the end of the class keeps 5 minutes, 10 minutes for clarification, doubts, in which he wants the students to ask questions. Some classes they do, in some other classes they just keep quiet. Now, it does not mean that they do not have any questions. Of course, there are some students who are seething within, boiling within to ask some questions. It's the barrier that they have in mind. Fear of humiliation, shyness, hesitance, which is clogging their mind and it's not letting them speak out. Once the teacher leaves, they regret so much. So, learn to ask questions. Now, in asking questions, what are you doing? You are making sure what the speaker is saying. And then, the speaker also feels connected. Or rather, you are also trying to show that you are connecting to the speaker. Is that what you mean when you are asking the speaker? So, if the speaker says, yes, exactly, that is what I mean, or that is not what I mean is this. So, then you say, oh, of course, I understand. Now, you are trying to connect to the speaker when you are asking questions. Now, when you ask questions, do not ask closed questions, ask open questions. This means do not ask yes or no questions. For instance, do not ask, has this been going on for 10 years? Has this been going on for 20 years? The person will say yes or no. He will say yes or no, and then he will clarify. Now, instead of that, you can make it open. You can ask the person, how long has this been going on? Now, by doing this, what do? You actually facilitate the speaker to elaborate more on this topic. So, ask open questions, do not put closed questions, which will elicit only monosyllabic answers as yes or no, or just concluding it in a single word or phrase. So, do not do that. The next important active listening technique is summarizing. Now, keep summarizing then and there. You will identify that when a speaker is speaking to you, there are moments when the speaker is getting stuck, or the moment the speaker is grasping for some more words, or the moment the speaker is not sure whether you have followed. The speaker will indicate that by a pause or by a meaningful glance at you. Now, this is the time you seize the moment, opportunity, and then you summarize. These are transition points. These are points in which you are moving from one level to another. Just quickly summarize. Oh, that's what you are talking about so far, and I think you would like to speak more on this. So, by doing this, you show the speaker that you are following him or her, and you are understanding the speaker's argument. You are taking the speaker's perspective. You are able to follow up to that much. So, for instance, let's say that one of your close friends is talking about the job situation. She was in a previous job, and then she has left the job, and then she has gone to another one. Now, she underwent some traumatic situation in the previous one, and she has gone to the new one. But then there are certain other emotional implications and attachments, and she is explaining. So, at one point you pause, and she is also groping for words, and then you tell her. So, you are exploited by your previous boss, but you are still loyal to him as he gave you the first job. Yeah, exactly, that's what I mean, that's what I am trying to tell you. So, see the kind of conflict, emotional conflict that I am having. I am not able to cut off from the previous one, but then not able to relate to the present one, although the present one is giving me better environment, work environment. I am not exploited, getting better paid, but somehow I still psychologically feel I am loyal to the previous boss. So, you put that right. So, good. So, now summarizing, it also helps in taking the speaker from one level to another. It saves time, minimizes repetition when you do that, and you are connecting, you are making the person feel wanted, understood, etc. What else you can do in terms of active listening techniques? Repeat. Now, when you repeat back a word or phrase along with the person, you are helping that person as well as you reflect or ponder over the ideas, thoughts. So, what you can do, you can just, when the person is saying something, you can just repeat the last two words, last one word, to indicate that you are encouraging this person to speak further. So, for instance, if a person says, so it's been really a different experience. Now, you can just simply repeat by saying, oh, yeah, different experience. Yeah, altogether it's a different experience. The person continues and tries to say why it is different. Or even you can just simply repeat the word experience. Yeah, it was totally a new experience, different from what I had experienced before. Or even you can just say different. Yes, it's different because I never had such a kind of experience. So, you are just making the person elaborate. You also reflect on that thought. You make the other person reflect and continue, clarify, and make that communication process go on and complete. When you do this, you also try to seek clarification. Now, there is a difference between asking questions and seeking clarification. Sometimes you may seek clarification by asking questions, but when you seek clarification, basically you are trying to admit that the idea is complex, you are not able to understand, and then you request the speaker to say more on the point. Now, when a point is illustrated, sometimes the speaker thinks that the speaker is able to make it clear to all. It's only when somebody is seeking clarification, the person understands, okay, I need to give some other example, I need to illustrate, or I need to look at it from a different angle so that the person can understand this. So, you will find that good teachers, good speakers will approach the same issue through 3 or 4 different angles. or they will give different illustrations, examples. So, when you see clarification, you are also making the speaker make herself much more clearer to the larger part of the audience who would have missed certain point, but for your clarification seeking behavior. So, seek clarification. So, help the speaker to clarify the same issue through a different point. Now, interestingly, you also make the speaker clarify that to himself or herself. Sometimes you ask something, there are some very interesting speakers who spontaneously tell that, oh, I never thought about that, even that point is not clear to me. So, now that you have asked, it should be like that, or let me look it up and then come and discuss that with you tomorrow. The next day the person is more vibrant and then comes and tells how it should be looked at. So, you are also making the speaker clarify, otherwise the speaker would think that everything is understood by the audience. So, again you are making the communication effective from both sides and contributing to further win-win situation. Then, as an active listener, focus on message. Remember, I said that one prejudices oneself by looking at the appearance of the speaker. The speaker looks ugly. I don't like to look at the face of the speaker. The speaker is not wearing good dress. The speaker has not shaved off. I don't like speaker with a beard, and so on. Now, cut off these things and then focus on message, because you will find that most of the eminent speakers, scientists and all that, they don't have time for cosmetic touches at their appearance. They are at the hard inner core. They will touch your heart and soul, and then they will change your attitude, they will change your thinking pattern. Is new schema will be created if you are involving yourself in the speech. Now, if that is the thing, do not focus on any irregularities. Maybe the shoes are not tied properly, or the button is off. So, any kind of irregularity. So, do not focus on those things, focus on the content. Show that you are very much interested in the subject, not in the irregularities of the person. Concentrate on the meaning and the intent, the purpose, the good intention in which the speaker is trying to share that information with you. Show care and empathy. Show that you care for the speaker and show that you are feeling into some of the feelings of the speaker. Now, suppose the speaker makes a mistake, which is quite natural. Maybe the speaker misplaces the transparency, or the speaker does not know how to move from one PowerPoint slide to another one. Very simple basic things. Instead of sitting on the front row and then just laughing at the speaker and making fun, or telling your friend, oh, this speaker even does not know this thing, this is such a simple thing. Instead of doing that, put yourself into the shoes of the other person and then show consideration, empathize and offer help. Even instead of asking, you just volunteer. I remember a situation where a friend of mine who became my best friend later, but that was the first time I met the person in the conference, and this person was using these transparencies, and then due to the speed of the fan, some of the transparencies started flying off. So, I was just there on the front one. I could have just waited for him to come and pick it up, but I could see that he was already nervous because the time given, he was almost exceeding the time. So, I just offered myself without expecting formally that the speaker would ask me to do. I just collected the transparencies and then put them in order and then gave it to the person, and he continued. So, he was quite appreciative later during the lunch that I could do this for him, and then that established some kind of trust and rapport and then generated a new friendship. So, I am not saying that all these things will end up in happy friendship, but at least as an audience, if you are able to show consideration and empathy, it is showing that you are a very active listener. So, I will just continue more on this listening techniques, and then I will also try to give you some illustrative example as how to become an effective listener. If you remember, at the beginning of this module, in the first lecture, I told you that you should stop having any kind of prejudice against a speaker or against a personality just by the way you hear about certain things. The illustrative example given was about Beethoven, and then you were given all negative things, and then you were almost forced to conclude that the child should be aborted because the parents were not well and all that. Now, that kind of thing can generate negativity, cause prejudice, but you should also be cautious when you want to become an effective listener, an active listener. You should be also cautious about positive bias. Now, today you are surrounded by media, you are surrounded by lot of information that's bombarding you, that information flow. So, you should be able to evaluate whether that information that's coming to you is right or wrong. And the worst of all, today medium has become the message, that is, what it tells is what you believe. Now, the way they show certain things can be horrifying or can be very comforting. So, the angle they select, the clips they decide to show you can have a very powerful positive or negative influence in your thinking. Now, that you should be wary of. Should you let somebody think, should you let somebody's thinking influence over you? So, that you keep in mind, and then let us look at a message. Now, this message, you see your feeling after I read the message, you also follow me when I am reading this and see how it is influencing your thinking. This is the message about a leader. Let me read this. Our leader had an unhappy childhood and little formal education. His father bitterly opposed his ambition to become an artist. So, even the father was not very supportive. Through self-education, so he is a self-made man, that is something we should appreciate. He became the author of a book that became a national bestseller. So, it is not that easy to write a bestseller, and he has written a bestseller. Obstacles do not discourage him, as against the normal human beings who will be stuck with obstacles. When others say it is impossible, he hurdles each barrier as it comes. So, he enjoys overcoming instead of succumbing to obstacles. He has built an active youth movement of selected young people. So, he is dynamic, he is able to motivate young people, which is again a very important quality of a leader. He is known throughout the world for his dynamic speeches. So, he is a powerful orator as well, which is another important ingredient for a leader. His closest associates say of him, his intimate friends, administrative friends, they tell him, they say, he accomplishes incredible deeds out of the passion of his will in order to create the kind of government he believes in. So, he is able to create the government, he is able to change the government, he is able to make people believe in his own government. Now, when you listen to all these things, you generally tend to feel that, oh, such a great personality, positive frame of mind, able to hold a charisma against all odds, has emerged as a great author, has become a dynamic personality in terms of influencing young minds. Not only that, he is able to hold control over the whole people of a state, he is able to change the governance. Now, will we not think that we should worship such a personality, such an eminent personality? Obviously, yes. But who was the author thinking of? Whom did he refer to about this great personality? And you will be surprised to know that The famous personality that the author referring to is none other than Adolf Hitler. Now, you can obviously see that that's a very euphemistic eulogy on Hitler, looking at one dimension of the personality and completely ignoring another dimension that terrified the whole world, the dimension of his dictatorship. Yeah, he is a good orator, no doubt, but then he also believed in a policy in which he thought that if you tell a lie 10 times, then it becomes the truth. So, the political propaganda, he believed that if you could say that repeatedly with force, with emphasis, it can change, influence, corrupt the mind of the people. Now, what I am trying to conclude in this is that when I say that you should become an active listener, you should also add this evaluative and critical part in your thinking. When you are becoming an active listener, only then you become an effective listener. So, you may be alert, you may be attending to the speaker, getting all the information. Now, in this case, the speaker wanted you to take Hitler as a positive personality and as a very model of a leader whom you should emulate, but he didn't project the negative aspects of the same personality. So, when you evaluate, you look at the pros and cons, you look at the good side and the bad side of the person. When somebody is exaggerating something, you also tend to realize this is just an exaggeration, there may be some other facts. Look for some facts. Sometimes even a single small fact can overthrow so many things, can falsify lot of stories, myths built around something. So, look for that small evidence, that footnote, side note, that hint. So, that will make you understand things without even positive bias. At the beginning of the module, I cautioned you of forming prejudice which is negative, but you should be equally wary of, especially nowadays in the technological advancement by media that's influencing our thinking. You should be aware of this kind of idea influencing thinking also. Now, once you are cautious about this, let me give more tips about effective listening overall, and then while concluding I will talk about the benefits of listening. Now, to become an effective listener, just to re-emphasize some points, pay complete attention, be devoted. Okay. So, do not get distracted, ward off all negative thinking when you are there. Don't think ahead as to what you are going to say next, especially if you happen to be the speaker. If you happen to ask some questions, listen to the speaker first, the questions will generate themselves. So, you do not have to think when the speaker is telling you something. So, that way again you are getting distracted. Don't rehearse your own comments while the other is speaking. Don't think what you will be doing when the speaker finishes. Don't do that. Stop that kind of thinking. Don't interrupt. I repeat to say this, don't interrupt, but remain silent while the other person speaks. It doesn't show off your personality if you interrupt very often, but by remaining calm and silent, you are showing that you have some polite, courteous behavior. So, show that, do it. Listen for feelings underneath words and to the nuances in language. Listen for feelings underneath words and to nuances in language. So, look for the subtext. Don't take the words literally, but look for that subtle meaning. When somebody says something, look for the actual inner meaning. Identify why the person is saying that thing, and you actually get into the core of the meaning. Read the body language. Is the person nervous? Is the person excited? Is the person correlating certain ideas by using body language? Read it. Keep an open mind. I said at the beginning that the mind is like a parachute. So, it functions only when it is open. So, keep the mind open and do not judge immediately. Don't make any judgment. Wait for the speaker to conclude. let the speaker have the last word. You do not interfere and you do not form judgments. Encourage the speaker to continue. Even if suppose somebody is interrupting the talk, snubbing the speaker, and the speaker is completely caught unawares, the speaker is feeling embarrassed, you may just pacify this kind of unrest among the audience and still encourage the speaker to continue with the talk. And then you can clarify what is being said. If some part of the audience are becoming restless, you can just clarify what the speaker is trying to tell in a different manner. Then again tell the speaker to continue and then be supportive. Okay. Especially if necessary, this kind of interference is welcome to show that you are supporting the speaker. Not that you are inimical to the audience, you are actually part of them, but you don't want the speaker to feel that he or she is being let down by one rude group of audience. So that you don't want to do, because your company's image, your institutional image is also tagged with the kind of audience behavior, especially when the guest speaker is coming from a very highly esteemed organization. Now, as a concluding thought, as a concluding remark, let me talk about some benefits of effective listening. So, in today's materialistic world, we always want to know what is it there for me. If I do this, what will I get? Okay, you are saying that I should become an active listener. So, at the end of it, what will I get? What are the benefits? Now, I can count so many benefits, but here are some. Apart from making you very effective communicator, let's look at some of the basic benefits. Basically, it removes barriers between interpersonal communication, that is barriers between one-to-one relationship, barriers between communication between one group to another group. So, the barriers are removed. Most of the times, one person is unhappy with the other person because often we hear this person, it may be wife, it may be subordinate, saying that, oh, my husband never listens, my manager never listens. So, you tell your another friend, can we just raise this point and then make the head do this for us? So, the other person says, can you really convince the head about this? Can you really make the head think what we are thinking? Is that easy? So, can we really take this to the manager? Why? Because the manager is a poor listener. Now, if you happen to be that manager or head, understand this situation, and if you are interested in effective listening and if you practice active listening, it will automatically remove this barrier. Instead of you talking, allow the people to talk. That itself will resolve the issue. Another benefit of effective listening, it minimizes miscommunication and wrong transactions. So, I will just, while concluding, I will give some examples, but understand that in most of business transaction, miscommunication takes place just because a person is not able to listen properly at the other side and wrong business transactions are happening. It saves so much time because the business is handled efficiently. Whatever is said, the other person listens carefully, doesn't make a mistake, and then does the things accurately. It adds to efficiency. Thereby, it also builds up trust and generates mutual respect. In terms of company, it also generates goodwill. The customers get a feeling that we are always listened to. There's not a single instance where our complaints were ignored. Even our suggestions were taken care. So, we are part of the decision making process. They listen to us. So, it builds trust, and apart from building trust, it generates respect. Respect for the speaker, and the speaker developing respect for the audience, the receiver part of communication, and then it generates mutual respect. And again, when there is mutual respect, so there is positive environment for good communication, there is more business, healthy attitude promoting from both sides, and then there is overall kind of happiness generating in communication climate. There are other benefits of effective listening. Sometimes effective listening as such is used to calm down, comfort and soothe people. I have seen a manager dealing with people who are on strike. What the manager does, when the person comes running and they are just shouting slogans, he just calls, okay, 2-3 of you come, we'll have a discussion. These 2-3 people come, and then he just sit down, then says, which drink would you like to have, tea or some cool drink? No, they are already furious. They say, no, we will not have anything. Okay, at least drink water. Now, what he is doing, first he is just trying to assess their need, listening to them. So, at least he gives water or something. While they drink, he tells them, okay, what's your problem? Now, when they say this, it doesn't interfere at all, just listens. So, it calms down. That finally the manager has listened to us, whereas we could not go to the lower level people and they were not listening. So, it helps people calm down. There are situations when we comfort and soothe people just by listening, especially in tragic situations. Somebody lost the beloved, a young child lost in an accident. Okay. Talking to the mother is very traumatic, but the mother needs to talk to somebody who would listen to her sensibly. So, in that situation, you are comforting, soothing the person. Now, in all these things, what it does further is that it develops confidence and self-esteem. The moment a person knows that I am good at listening and people appreciate my listening skills, automatically it generates confidence in communication and it generates one's self-esteem. The person feels good about himself. He knows that I am a good listener and people like me because I am a good listener. I will become an effective listener by listening more to people. It also facilitates productivity and accuracy in terms of organizational setup, because you do not make any mistake. You listen, talk less, focus more on work. And in therapeutic relations also it is very helpful. Therapeutic relations like counselors, psychologists, even doctors, if you look at what they are actually doing or what is that skill that is distinguishing some of the doctors and some of these counselors, is that they are very effective listeners, they are patient listeners, active listeners. They listen to the worries, problems of the patients, give sensible attention to them. So, that makes the patient feel comfortable. Things which you cannot tell at home, things which you cannot share it with your friends, you are able to tell the counselor, you are able to tell your family doctor. What the person does is just giving time and listening to you. So, that is functioning as a kind of remedy, as a kind of therapy. So, even it helps there, and even certain religious practices, just like the doctor, psychologist in modern days. So, from time immemorial, religious practices have their own priest, their own magicians, or there are bishops and other people whom people go and talk. So, there is this father in the church whom people go and confess. The father asks very pointed questions, but then most of the time it's the other person who is talking, not the father who is listening to this person. So, even some of the religious practices are kept intact because that the religious heads are very good listeners. They listen to the problems, and even by listening they are actually sorting out the problems. Often the person who is troubled, the person who is in conflict, realizes that while talking to somebody itself, the person is able to resolve one's own problems. So, all the person needed was somebody who is a good listener. The listener just listened, then he asked, so what do you think you should do? So the person says, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. Oh, I think this is the thing I should do. Thank you so much. But actually the listener did nothing. It's the person who thought of it and did everything on his own. Overall, once you become an effective listener, it makes you much demanded either in personal or in professional or in both situations. Always people want to talk to you, always people come to you with their problems, and you do not have the magic to solve their problems, but you are a good listener. That itself is enough for them. Now you are able to complete professional tasks efficiently. Remember two examples that I gave at the beginning of the lecture on communication. So a person on phone orders for 10 boxing gloves, but the person at the other side was a poor listener, and then he sent 10 boxes of gloves. What he wanted was 10 boxing gloves which are different, used for boxing, but this fellow sent 10 boxes of gloves. So there are about 100 gloves which can be used in winter or while driving, but they are different types. So total miscommunication, damage in terms of productivity, loss for the company, unhappiness, anger, mutual suspicion, and so on. And also remember the example I gave about burning the document. Okay, so somebody asked the subordinate to just go and get that legal document burnt. In the sense, he said, can you burn this for me? What he meant was, you just make a copy of it, make a photocopy. Now the other person understood that as literal burning, and he burnt a copy that was kept for 200-300 years. So obviously the person was fired off. Now if the person was an effective listener, the person could have asked, do you mean to say that, that is asking and seeking clarification, do you mean to say that I should burn this? No, I mean to say you should take a photocopy. Okay. So just because the person didn't have that basic listening skills, the person lost a very lucrative job. And overall, it also gives job satisfaction in professional environment when you realize that you are doing that job accurately, you are able to do that efficiently, and people are looking forward towards you doing that job, you negotiating in that situation, you going and giving that presentation about your company, because they think that you are the one who is doing good justice just because of the fact that you are an effective listener. Overall, it contributes to the fact that you become a very efficient, good communicator, and people are quite happy about keeping you, whether it's a job environment or it's a family situation. And then, like as the end of the fairy tale, then you start living happily ever after. So become an efficient listener and reap rich benefits and rewards. So with this note, I will conclude this lecture, and just at the concluding point, leave this thinking: see more, be all eyes; hear more, be all ears, but speak less. And if at all you have to speak, speak, but speak less. And thank you so much for listening. And just quick references: there's a book on effective listening skills. If you want to develop this further, I've given major tips, you can look at this. There's also a professional book dealing with listening as a kind of business skill, the business of listening. So you can also refer to this. And also the book that I referred to before, Confidence in Public Speaking, also has a wonderful section on listening as such. So thank you so much once again. We'll meet again on the next module on communication skills. Thank you.